Hey, hope we're keeping well today. I'm chatting with Ian Reeves, who is head of Wellbeing at the South Sydney Rabbitohs, which are an NRL team in Australia. And yeah, I suppose for those back in Ireland or Europe, the NRL is massive in Australia, as I've kind of found out, and in New Zealand, massive down this part of the world. So cheers for jumping on, Ian. I suppose to start, what does your week look like, or what's your role? What do you do there?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on, Brian. I suppose in a nutshell, I work with the players on all things psychological related to performance, human being, overall health, if that makes sense. So, um, we've 36 players in our top 30 or our senior squad. We've 350 pathways kids that kind of stem from under 16 all the way up to our reserve grade or our academy team. Um, Kind of week to week, it can kind of depend. So depends on the length of our turnaround in our game. So if we play Saturday and we play the following Saturday, week will probably look like Monday, Wednesday, Friday will be training days. Tuesday, Thursday are off days for the playing group, but you'll always have lads in doing rehab or extras or anything like that. Um, Day kind of looks like get in about 6 a.m. Players will start to come through at about 7. That gives them a window to drop into me. We'll kind of have every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks regular catch up with fellas, but some lads might be working through different things that they might be in 3 times a week or once every week for a period of time. But minimum lads kind of come in once every 3 or 4 weeks. Overall, like the way I describe it to them, it's pretty informal. It's just a chat, just checking in as to how things are going, what things they're working on, what things they might be struggling with. That can be emotional and mental health. It can be performance based. It can be stress. It can be confidence. It can be problem solving. It can be planning for life post professional sport. Um, it all really depends on what the player's needs and wants are at the time. Um, Kind of goes into team meetings. Then sometimes I'll lead team meetings, or especially in the preseason, we'll have one team meeting a week with the entire playing group. Where, example, in the preseason, we focus on habit formation. And a simple process for them to tap into around developing positive habits that will support them both on and off the field. We did a little bit around personal philosophy and values and what their visions are for the year. So, in terms of preseason, it's probably a busier time because that's when you set your foundation. And then in season, because they're not here probably as frequently as they are in preseason, um, a lot of it's just kind of maintenance work then, especially from probably around 12 to around 27, which is 3 and a bit months. Um, it just gives you an opportunity just to hone down on a few things with them. So, um, in a nutshell, that's what I do. I'm essentially a therapist or a counselor for them, but then also just someone to talk to or get advice off in relation to whatever it might be, whether it's something off field or something on field related, and just providing them with the confidence then to go and do something about it and fulfill their potential. Um, but yeah, it's a great role, and it's a one that I'm really enjoying. Constantly challenging, put it that way, but it's there's some really good learning in it.
Yeah, cool. And so, yeah, I can imagine pre-season, yeah, doing those workshops and kind of present the whole group, and then you get into the thick of the season. What would be kind of some common things that players might come to you with?
I suppose it can kind of vary depending on the if you want to call it the biopsychosocial profile of the player. So biologically, how old they are, socially, where they're living, where they're from, and then psychologically, how mature, if you want to call it, they are. So the stuff that maybe a 19-year-old who's moved from Brisbane down to Sydney or from New Zealand to Sydney into a big city away from home, he's chatting to me around. There's been a few lads talking about being homesick. I can relate to that, being nearly 20,000 kilometres away from home myself. despite not experiencing it too much, with a good, strong social network and good communication, etc., still back with family at home. But that might be something that they'd come to me with. Then you might have a guy that's kind of breaking into the team, is starting to put a few games under his belt, but then has been dropped in recent weeks, just around what kind of mindset he's taken towards being dropped down to reserve grade, and how he's going to manage that little transition so he's not kicking stones, but he's kind of proven that, you know what, even the way he carries himself, his body language, his behavior, his tone of voice, training standards, that kind of stuff. Then you might have one of the boys out of the leadership group that has recognized that there's a couple of the actions that some of the playing group are living that are not aligned or are aligned to the values that the team has set, and just ways to develop that out, or just giving them as leaders an outlet just to speak about some of the things that they're working with. They're just letting them vent about something. There might be a guy that's recently become a dad, and just the emotional toll that him and his partner might have gone through during that process, and just settling that in. And then you might have a guy, as I mentioned, that's coming towards retirement or moving away from the club after joining in 2013, and it's now the end of the 2024 season. He's been here 11 years. He's the third most cap player in the club, and he's to say goodbye to something that he's been used to for the last 11 years. So that brings natural change and elements of stress as well. So without trying to skim the question, it just really depends on where the player is at. But I think the most important thing is, for me, is trying to have my finger on the pulse with what you're doing and where you're at and where you're living and what's going on for you, and partner and social circle and lifestyle outside of it. And by me being able to do that, it just equips me being able to do a better job.
Mm. Yeah, so it's like kind of like that emotional support as well. Yeah, for the players. And is there mental skills as well, or is that your role within the
We
club?
don't have mental skills, so we incorporated some mental skills at the start of the year, very much based on kind of self awareness initially, and then based into poise, persistence, and presence. So, uh, developing that calm blue head in times of madness, that persistence of, I suppose, grit, that passion and perseverance, and then the element of presence, which that mindfulness and that ability to be where your 2 feet are and remain in the moment. So, um, some players are drink that stuff by the gallon. Some fellas don't really use it. It's the exact same way you'll see fellas in their pre-game rituals around how they prep themselves. Some fellas will do a mindfulness exercise for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and other lads will be walking around the dressing room joking and laughing until it's 5 minutes before the warm up. So, we do incorporate a good bit of that into kind of our team meetings, and how we want to feel and what we're going to think and why we do certain things and how we stay connected despite what's going on, and kind of managing that outer noise. But um, it kind of lands underneath my remit a bit, but also the coaches as well, because they're out in the field with the boys, and the leadership group too.
Yeah. And so you're in an office there in headquarters or wherever, and so you're around around the boys, around the trainings, and you kind of out and about watching training, or just what's that kind of like?
Yeah, so we moved facility. I joined in January, so we moved facility in April of 2023. Um, and when I started the role, the office that was designated to me, or the room for my kind of work, was kind of in the corner of the facility where the boys could skip by it, or they mightn't even see it on a daily basis. So then when we moved facility, there was plans made that um, my office was visible and the boys would walk by it a minimum, like I say, it's about 10 times a day, to be honest. We made a decision around the glass on, so it's a big glass kind of open office, and a lot of the offices in the facility have kind of clouded windows and clouded glass, but we actually made the decision not to cloud mine, which is kind of drove a culture of vulnerability and openness. So the lads just walk in here, and the way the layout is of the facility is that they'll walk by here to go to even down to their changing facility. The player lounge is right here, so they'll be walking by here all the time. Um, but what's happened is when boys see other boys in here, they're kind of going, "Fuck, I need to go in there and have just a chat and just a bit of a debrief." Even if we're chatting about how the weekend was and just building rapport, it's more than it's sometimes more than enough for some fellas, you know. But then yeah, in terms of like getting out and watching training, because there's a constant flow of lads in and chatting, it probably, when the boys go on the field, it probably gives me an hour or 90 minutes or even 2 hours to write case notes and um, program plan or workshop development or catch up with external stakeholders or do monthly reviews with the CEO and the head of football, or it just actually gives me a window to take a break. So I actually rarely, I go out and I'd be walking around and catching up with injured players that might be doing some extra stuff on the side of the field. But in terms of going out and getting on the pitch and throwing rugby balls around, I leave that to the coaches. They'd be better at that. I'd end up making a fool of myself.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you mentioned there, like some players or a lot of players just come in, have a chat, and just when you were saying that, it just kind of sparked something in me, and so beneficial that is. Like I even find, like, say on a Wednesday evening, I go to the sauna and ice bath with a couple of friends, one or two or three, depending on who's around, and we just have a chat. And like, you'd be chatting about whatever, and just like, oh, I've this going on, that going on. Often 70-80% positive, and then you're kind of 20-30% maybe not so positive, and it's just, you just have a chat, and it's like, even chat to my housemate or whatever, you just have the chats about the day or whatever, and just talking through things. I don't know, it's so powerful. Whereas, yeah, if you just not verbalizing these things, so like, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, yeah, it's often beneficial to, like you mentioned there, like, oh, someone might just come in and chat about the weekend. It's like, yeah, great. And it, like, you feel so good, and it's just like, talk things through. I can't remember who it was said, but sometimes when you've stuff going on or whatever, just talking it, you don't even need the other person to give you advice off, and you just talk it out, and it's like, it just makes more sense to you, and you're, yeah, better able to go on your way then.
100%. Like, so some fellas will come in and just vent, and they're nearly solving their own challenges or dilemmas by just talking it through. And then some lads will come in and go, this is going on and I need your advice on it. Or can we have a chat about ways to kind of move around it or get around the obstacle or the barrier that it is what it is. Or the Pacifica boys, the Kiwis and the Tongan and the Fijian boys will come in and just rip me to shreds that Ireland still haven't won a World Cup in years. So like, they're like, whatever way lads want to engage with me, I don't really force it upon them to be a certain way. I think it's pretty important for me as a practitioner to be able to go from kind of formal to informal pretty quick. So if we're chatting about one of the boys came in and was slagging that around the Ireland Sevens in the Olympics because they were like, you boys should stick to the union and all this kind of stuff. And the Fijians were going well. And that was the first 10 minutes. But then the second 20 minutes is related to what's actually going on for them off the field. And by engaging with them in what they're interested in and what they're passionate about, it just builds rapport and trust. And that just makes them feel that they can be open and vulnerable. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But thankfully, the group of lads here and the leadership group really drive, like, just be your authentic self. You don't need to come in here and put on a mask. We want every player to be who they are um, and be themselves. And if you need support with whatever you might need, we've got the resources here for you to do it. And we want you to be able to be a great player, but also to become a great person at the Rabitohs. So we kind of really drive that kind of that motto, if you want to call it.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting as well. The you mentioned Pacifica boys there, so Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, and then like Maori as well. How different they are in great ways, like having laughs and like maybe mindset around performance, or the real typical one I've heard it said before is on the Seven series. If you're playing Fiji and they're all serious beforehand, that's good. If you're playing Fiji and they're dancing and singing songs and dancing around playing music 2 minutes before they go out to play, you're fucked.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like, uh, we've probably maybe 15 fellas from kind of Pacifica backgrounds, um, and they're the life and soul of this place. Like, they bring superb energy, extremely humble, extremely grateful, very connected to people and place. Just really like good humans, and probably the concept of kind of therapy or help seeking or chatting to, whether they call me the 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 well-being guy or the performance guy or the mindset guy or whatever, like lads would all refer to me as different things, but especially in the Pacifica culture, it's probably something that is a little bit behind just due to their help seeking behaviors. We know that um, some of the squeeze that is put on them from kind of a family point of view, they come from a big family. A lot of them will support not just their immediate family, but their cousins and their uncles and a broad range of people. So that brings additional pressure to them. But yeah, they're champion fellas, and yeah, it's one that I hadn't experienced before. But when you see them pre and post game, but just even how they carry themselves, they're good lads.
Yeah, yeah, it's so challenging. Like you've hear that quite a lot in union as well, and that's the culture. Not even anything to do with sport, but if Fijians or Pacifica people go abroad to America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, that they send money back, and the pressures that would put onto someone, like wow, like even if you think about me or you, if we had to support a family back in Ireland, like it just adds so much pressure. And we often don't know, yeah, like the pressures that people face, we're often not aware.
100%, 100%. So yeah, I suppose it's just given those boys the opportunity to talk about ways to manage those stressors, but also those relationships with the people, and providing them with opportunities to, I suppose, kind of reshape some of those relationships or those agreements that are in place. So we do have, due to the, I suppose, the complexity of the cultural needs and how things are done, we do have a Pacifica psychologist that the boys can speak to. So it was probably a gap in my own skill set that I recognized that it's probably important that the boys feel like they can talk like for like with somebody who's also very well qualified and has worked in elite sports. So we have a Pacifica guy and we have an Indigenous guy that the boys can access, but typically that'll come through me. And then if I recognise, you know what, I actually think it might be worthwhile for you to sit down with Shane or Justin, we'll just make it happen. And I just kind of become kind of the middleman, and just double check that they're doing what they said they were going to be doing and making sure that the boys are happy enough with the progress that they're making, etc.
Yeah. Another complex last thing on this, but like another complexity then in this kind of stuff is religion, in that some people are very religious and some people are not at all, and would tie in with this stuff, with with well-being, with mental skills, with performance, like it's a part of some people and it's absolutely not a part of other people.
100%. So again, it comes back to kind of the what I said a few minutes ago around just letting boys be their authentic selves and bringing bringing their full selves to the squad. Because if we get the best version of everybody, it enables us to be the best team we can be. So Some lads are very connected to their faith, some lads aren't at all. But again, it's providing them with the opportunity to do so. And there's no one bats an eyelid about any of it. It's whatever way they want to do it. You see some of their pre-game rituals and their training day rituals around how they do stay connected to their faith. But whatever the kind of messaging that I kind of give to the players is, whatever you need to do or whatever I can do to support you to be your personal best, let's get into it and let's do what we need to do.
Brilliant, yeah. And what is your background up until coming over to Australia?
So I did a sports and exercise undergraduate in UCD, and as part of the second year, I had to do an internship. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. Or I actually originally wanted to be a physiotherapist when I was in school, and that's kind of what I had on the top of after my leaving cert. That was my top choice, but I missed that by a little bit. And then I didn't really. I was always kind of in the sporting domain, so I did the undergraduate in the second year to do an internship. The intern administrator kind of said, look, Ian, the Gaelic Players Association they're looking for an intern, and I can see on your CV that you play GAA. Is this something that you'd be interested in? And I was like, yeah, perfect. So I did 10 weeks with them, and they gave me a little bit of a flavor of, I suppose, the different departments of a players association or a players union. Kind of collective bargaining agreements, the financial side of things, the commercial side of things, the player welfare and the charter side of things. But the player development and well-being department, I just loved it. I really enjoyed that concept. So they sat me down with a coaching psychologist who works with intercounty players at the time, just for me to experience what intercounty players would experience if they came to the association looking to develop themselves. And I came out of the coffee meeting with this guy called Declan O'Connell. He's actually from Cork. And I was driving home and I said, fuck, I want to be able to do what he did with me, because I came out of there feeling very motivated with clear goals of what I needed to do to be better. And I caught up with him then 3 months later. And then that kind of started my journey in this space. So in my last year of my undergraduate, the GPA offered me kind of 2 days a week, which I was able to do in developing their programs and starting to work with intercounty players. It was mad. Like I'm obviously from Dublin, so working with some intercounty players that I would have looked up to or admired or seen on television, I was now having phone calls with them and emailing them around things that they're looking to do off the field. And when COVID hit, so then I finished my undergraduate and did my undergraduate thesis related to the intercounty student lifestyle and the demands that they're under, which was an interesting one. And I then started a full-time job at the GPA and kind of grew from player development officer all the way to the lead development coach. So, and that kind of was, I suppose, spiraled or fast tracked due to COVID. So prior to COVID, we had an extended panel of coaches who worked with our players. So if you were a Galway footballer, you worked with the coach that we had in Connacht, or if you were a Munster hurler, you worked with the coach that we had in Munster, all that kind of stuff. But when COVID came and there was a lot of uncertainty around the financial budget that we were going to have going forward, we were forced to internalize the offering. And then fortunately, the GPA then provided me with the opportunity to do a master's in applied coaching psychology, which was great because I was able to do it online. While there's pros and cons to it, of course, but that just accelerated my expertise. And then we actually never moved back to the external model. We stayed with the internal model. So I then stayed with the GPA until for another kind of 3 or 4 years. Probably worked with over 2,500 players in my time, whether that was for one player did 10 sessions or one player did 2 sessions, but I've definitely worked with quite a lot. And then um, COVID, obviously, COVID restrictions were lifted and we were back to kind of the normal way of life. And I was driving home from Clare after meeting a number of Clare hurlers in Ennis, and I pulled in to get petrol, and I just looked at my phone, and I had a message on LinkedIn, and it was the CEO of South Sydney saying, um, "Ian, how are things? I'd be really keen to have a chat with you about filling our head of psychological wellbeing role here at the Rabitohs. Let me know when you might be free for a call." And it went from there, and now I'm in Sydney.
Cool. And how did he find you? Like on LinkedIn?
So, yeah, I presume on LinkedIn. Prior to COVID, I did an online course as part of my development plan, which was a certificate for an elite athlete wellbeing, which is delivered by an Australian institute called the Wellbeing Institute, and there was a couple of key stakeholders on that course who gave kind of keynote speakers and key insights into various things. So, but there was one scenario where there were judges on a debate, and uh, the kind of head of wellbeing and education in the NRL was one of them, a guy called Paul Heptonstall. And fortunately, I must have struck a chord with him over that period. And I now see and speak to Hep quite frequently, but he obviously, I suppose the Rabbitohs are probably looking to hire somebody, and they maybe went to Paul Heptonstall and said, "Look, we're looking to hire," and my name might have been thrown around. It was a pretty big punt to take, bringing an Irish lad over who had no idea what rugby league was until January of last year.
Yeah, brilliant. And I suppose what has surprised you most then, yeah, about coming into new roles? What's surprised you most or maybe been challenging?
Hmm. Yeah, there's probably a number of, in terms of the surprises, like the with with no with no disrespect to the game or the players, but I probably came in expecting them to know a little bit more around kind of psychological frameworks and mental skills and mindset stuff than I experienced. So one of the things that I probably always need to remind myself is to, and this, I don't mean this to sound respect or disrespectful, but just to kind of dummy it down at times and use their language. Rugby league is a lower to middle class sport here in Australia. A lot of the playing group might um, might have varying experiences in education and things like that. So that was probably a surprise around. I thought I might have been starting at a little bit more of an intermediate or advanced level, whereas for some of them I was actually a little bit more beginner. Um, and the challenges are, what challenge there's opportunity, but like challenges obviously are when you lose a couple of games and there's a couple of questions being asked around why isn't player X, Y, or Z performing, um, which I always stand my ground on and protect the confidentiality of the playing group, but also then work with the player to provide them with the opportunity to view the game or the thing that they're working towards as something exciting and fun. As we saw this year, our head coach that brought me to the club left in May, so that transition was pretty challenging because it just creates anxiety and a level of uncertainty. But our interim coach has done a brilliant job in galvanizing the group. Got our season back on track, went 6 wins in a row, kind of back in June and July, and there was a renewed sense of energy around the building. But I think just keeping things fresh and reminding the fellas of why we're here and doubling down on the things that works for them um, is can be a challenge at times. My own energy can be a challenge. Rocking in, like I suppose, for quite a large majority of my week, I'm listening to someone else's challenges or problems. And be stupid for me to say that I don't deal with my own challenges or problems, because I think everybody does at different stages. So just trying to manage all that and then come home and be in good form, and you lose last night and get up this morning and then be a good housemate and be a good mate and partner and not trying to carry it too much. So there's loads of challenges, Brian, but like you just gotta fucking roll with it, I suppose.
Mm. And how do you? Is there any way that you do deal with that? Like obviously, a stressful pressure, that comes upon you as well as players, like you mentioned there, as in like, oh, Tom, Jim, and Harry aren't playing well. Why is that? Like sort that out. Like, like pressure comes upon you as well. And I suppose do you have any ways in which you manage yourself?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. Like I probably not as much as I should, but um, the my non-negotiables are like sleep and exercise are pretty important. Pretty fortunate to live down in North Bondi, so down to Bondi for a swim always helps. Um, Big believer in work hard, play hard. So making sure that I see friends and able to switch off, whether that's going golfing or swimming or going for a run or drinking a few pints. That's I don't just shut myself away. Um, Really good supportive circle. So I have my own mentor, my parents, partner, housemates. I can come home sometimes and just vent myself and be given out about X, Y, and Z. And like there was an example there a couple of weeks ago, um, where I nearly solved it in my own kind of verbal diarrhea, if you know what I mean. Um, so yeah, just trying to stay connected to the big picture of what I'm here to do. Getting advice and validation or encouragement from those that are important. Planning out my weeks. Making sure that I have time to switch off. So, like the way we work with the players, we'll work with them around kind of alcohol consumption and when they can and when they can't. But like, um, I know that they've a event in the next couple of weeks where players and partners will go and they'll celebrate together and they'll be together and connected. I kind of like to work towards that model as well myself. So whether it's a 3 week block or a 4 week block, where right, I'm gonna go hammer and tongs here, give it a good whack, do the things that I know work for me, and then at the end of that 4 weeks, I'll have earned the beers. I'm sure you've heard Dan Carter speak about that before. Or get away, or go see somewhere, or have something to look forward to. So yeah, there's 101 different ways to manage it, and different people will have different things, but that seems to work for me.
Yeah, good stuff. And one thing you mentioned there, a mentor. Having a mentor is big, isn't it?
It's again different strokes for different blokes, but I just really kind of like what you said around what we were describing, where lads just might come in and shoot shit around the weekend and having a just venting. And I've a I've a great mentor. I've two very good mentors, one at home and one out here. Um, and yeah, for me, it's maybe every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks, just pick up the phone and put the AirPods in and go for a walk and get a coffee and just chat about everything and learn from them around, well, Ian, I actually did this in this environment, or I did this in this scenario, and I might tease pick their brains on, look, I'm thinking of this idea or this team or delivering this group of workshops or doing this with the staff, or if I've other opportunities with other extra clients, which happens with other organizations, that people ask me, will I come and do a keynote or a couple of workshops based on a couple of things. So yeah, I just find it really helpful to talk things through with somebody that cares about you, but then also doesn't judge you, if that makes sense. And that's like, I parents are great, but they'll always have an opinion based on what they think is right for you, whereas this fella doesn't really give a shit what you do. He's like, yeah, go for it, man. Because it's not really too connected. They're very unbiased. They're very objective, and having those two kind of having the two kind of shoulders to lean on kind of helps me out. Yeah.
Mm. And they're obviously both, or are they both people in your work or who have worked in your area?
Yeah. So I probably not as much, but the coach that I met at home when I worked as part of the GPA, he's a mentor and was pretty transformational and impactful for me in securing the role out here. And then there's an Australian guy who is extremely, extremely well regarded, has worked in elite sport for probably close to 30 years, if not 20 years. He is a subject matter expert in culture and team dynamics and organizational kind of development and strategy and leadership. And so he does a little bit of work here with our leadership group, and kind of coaches the coaches, if that makes sense. He's like a coach's coach. Um, he works in netball, AFL, rugby union, Puma Australia. He's a gun. So again, for me, a mentor is somebody that you're trying to chase down and trying to be that person, while trying to do it in your own way and living it with your own values and stuff. But in terms of their career path, it's something that I'm really keen to do, and they've been really, really helpful for me. Yeah.
Yeah, class. And what any differences you've seen working with Gaelic players versus working with rugby league players?
I suppose that the big difference, like there's due to the environment, Brian, it's slightly different. So the guys here, they're full-time professional athletes, whereas the guys at home are dual career athletes, where they get up and go to work in the morning but train a serious amount as well. So personally, I only spoke to somebody about this a while ago that probably found at home that Gaelic players and the players that I worked with probably had a probably greater experience in life skills, simply due to the fact that some of them have been to college or done apprenticeships or started their own business or done a varying bits and pieces, but then can also manage the demands of going to work or going to college or doing their apprenticeship alongside training kind of 30 hours a week. Whereas out here, while the guys are ultra professional in their training standards and how they go about managing, I suppose, what's expected of them as a professional athlete, their exposure to different kind of fields of work and college and study and university and internships is probably a little bit different. So there was a former player, this probably highlights it even more. There's a former player at the Rabitohs who went overseas to finish his career. His name's Jason Clark. Superb individual, epitomizes what it is to be a South Sydney Rabbitohs player. We've a Jason Clark Award, which is kind of like the Players Player Award, which is the player who upholds the values of the club and is does the right things in the right way, and superb fella. But he actually came back at this time last year and joined my team as the Pathways and Academy Wellbeing Manager. And I'll never forget it. And it's something that I probably had to bring myself back down a peg or two when interacting with him. Was the first day he came in, having a chatting away, and he goes, "Ian, this is my first time sitting at a desk." And he's 33. And I was kind of like, wow, like that's mad, And so there's so many differences that I can go into, Brian, but like high level, there are some of the differences that you see. There's financial differences, there's cultural differences, there's environmental differences, there's societal differences, there's lifestyle differences. There's quite a bit, but like that's one of the ones for me that probably took me a fraction by surprise.
Mm, yeah, 100%. It's interesting. Like we are chatting beforehand, Wayne Bennett, coach in NRL, which people from Ireland might know because I didn't know before I went over, but has joined there, read his book, and he said something that in that book that he thinks players should work as well. Like the players rugby league used to be amateurish or used to be like semi-pro, and players worked and trained. And he was saying that that's good as well. And I know back in Ireland, the academies, the rugby union, everyone has to go to college or has to be doing something else. And yeah, it probably is important to have other things going on outside of just playing rugby, because you can obviously earn
100%.
so much money and you don't need to, but for other reasons.
110%, 1,000%. In terms of where to start there, like we, as a practitioner, we know the importance of the concept of identity for a player. So there's nothing wrong with a high level of athletic identity where you identify yourself as an athlete and that's what you do, but it's not who you are. Um, so expanding on their identity to support them in, I suppose, preparing for life post footy, but that preparation starts from the get go. Um, so you might actually see behind me here. We've a couple of pillars to our program, but one of them is the next chapter, and we've got a career coach that works with the boys. He's in kind of 2 or 3 days a week. Former Leeds United soccer player, superb fella, but works with our players on what are you doing outside of footy to support you in varying. There's so many aspects to working on something outside of footy, whether you're starting your own business or studying a course or building your network or finding out what you're interested in or doing an apprenticeship or doing a TAFE course or doing a degree or certificate or a barista course. It doesn't really matter. Like, so by doing that, then it's providing players with goals outside of footy. It's supporting them in switching off from NRL itself, because we know that if we can't switch off, how can we actually switch on? Um, it provides them with, I suppose, something to work towards for retirement. And I think the average game span or the career in rugby league is 47 games or something. It's pretty much a season, maybe season and a half. Um, and only the top percent go on to play 150, 200, and so on and so forth, and the percentages decrease. So yeah, we put a massive emphasis on it here, and we've had some really, really exciting stories of players writing kids' books, um, lads doing real estate, lads doing disability work and working on their day off in the week, lads going down to mechanics, lads setting up their own clothing brand, whatever floats your boat. It comes back to do you be you, and we'll support you in you becoming the best version of you. And that was up to me to get the right people in place. So we have Ryan, who comes in, and a really, really good career coach that works with the boys, and the boys all love him. So it's really important. I'm sure Wayne will drive that engagement as well for us next year when he comes back.
Who's the, when you say former lead soccer player, I think of Australia, Harry Kewell, but who's the soccer player that goes in?
Yeah, no, I think Gons was all the way up to, God, it could have been academy or even into. I'm not sure if he got into the first team or not, but yeah, having that lived experience of transitioning out of sport when things mightn't have gone as planned as he wanted, when he was trying to break in and be a Premier League soccer player and make a load of money and stuff, and he then transitioned into banking. and then transitioned into working with elite athletes and transition. And thankfully, he works with us now.
Yeah, cool. And where would you like to go from here? Like, I suppose it was a bit left of field, as you mentioned earlier, being in Australia. But yeah, any thoughts 5, 10 years down the line?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably going to be starting to build my own acumen to do my own thing and become a not a consultant, but I suppose you could call it a consultant, but to have a number of clients that I work with, but then also being able to do my own thing as well. So would love the model of working with a professional sporting organization 2 days a week and then working with a couple of corporates and a couple of individuals or whoever is seeking that support to go. For me to go from good to great is one of the mottos that I use. We're all pretty good. We wouldn't be here if we weren't good, but there's a little bit of a gap between good and great, and just supporting people and expanding that. So, a couple of plans in the pipeline to get something formalized on that front. But for me, I think that's going to get the best out of me, having that flexibility and autonomy to work with a number of different organizations and different peoples, and having a couple of different projects ongoing at different times. But uh, that's in the pipeline. For me, it's probably around supporting the fellas here, finish out the season, and then once Wayne comes along, looking to try and win the club's 22nd premiership. I'd love nothing more to finish out my time with the Rabitohs at some stage, because I will move home. But yeah, to win a premiership would be unbelievable.
Yeah, unreal. Cheers, we'll leave it there.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.